r/AskReddit by Reddit tells. Wedding planners of Reddit. Who was the worst Bridezilla/Groomzilla that you've had to deal with? Caterer. Mother of bride found a single spot on a knife on a single setting. Demanded that the entire reception, $60,000, be free. She was not writing the check, so she was shot down pretty quickly. But there was much rage. I sometimes work for a wedding planner at the event the day if there was one wedding that I was working at that was humming along right on schedule. But about 45 minutes before the ceremony was supposed to begin, a bridesmaid grabbed me in a panic and told me the bride forgot her shoes. She told me that the bride absolutely needed her shoes. So I asked where they were. She told me they were about an hour away. The wedding planner talked to the bride and told her that no one would notice if she didn't wear her shoes. The bride pitched a fit and made an uncle drive and get them. It took him about 2.5 hours to get them. The whole time, we were trying to convince the bride to start the ceremony and she refused. The worst part was that her family came from another country and didn't really speak English, so they had no idea what was going on at first. They got super restless and some people even left. We told the bride that people were leaving and she didn't care. She just wanted her shoes. Everything was delayed by about an hour and a half. People were pissed. By the time the reception rolled around, about 50% of the people left the venue. Was helping a friend plan her wedding. We literally had everything planned, had called in favors with friends to do everything at cost, and she had personally asked my mom to officiate. This was going to be gorgeous, and I did nothing without her. She was in on the entire thing, as she should be. Her in-laws got involved, and she started saying yes to everything they were saying without telling me. They then started asking me to ask my friends to do it all for free or give them a bigger deal than just cost. When I pushed back on the price, suddenly I was making her wedding all about me and being made out to be a nut job. My friend didn't even take the time to tell my mom that she had found a Catholic deacon to marry them. Mind you, she's Muslim and the groom converted from Catholicism to Islam to marry her in another ceremony, so someone lied about their faith here. I found out secondhand, 4 days before the wedding. I cancelled everything but the caterer. That was a fave my BF had called in and decided to keep, only because his buddy needed the money. She bought fake flowers and the ceremony was a train wreck. She got the aisle 5 wedding she paid for, and I got to save money on a dress. Not a wedding planner, but I witnessed this. The bride and her mother insisted that the mom make the wedding cake. This was the wedding the week before ours at the venue we used for our reception. They included the cake as part of the package, but these folks insisted on their own. The wedding planner at the hall, who did all the planning stuff for all the weddings held there, told them that you need to include a stand in the middle of the cake for support if you are going to use a wedding cake topper. The mother insisted she knew what she was doing and that her 3 cakes piled on top of each other were sturdy enough to support the large figurine cake topper. Fast forward to them setting up the reception, which we were there for in part as we had a meeting with the planner about final arrangements for our wedding. The whole time we are meeting, the planner kept apologizing for having trouble focusing because she kept looking past my then fiance and I over at the cake thinking it was looking off. We were wrapping up our meeting when suddenly she screams and bolts out of her chair. The topper had collapsed through the 3 layers of cake, then through the front, leaving the entire front of the cake a pile of crumbs with frosting. I never found out how that mess got fixed because my fiance and I got the hell out of there. Friend used to do high society weddings. There was a bride who was the nicest person imaginable, but everyone else was shit. Bridesmaids and groomsmen never showed up for the photo shoot. Reason? How were they supposed to show up if the planners didn't personally knock on their hotel room doors to remind them to get ready? The bride would set the groom a list of tasks. The second she was out of earshot, he'd turn to one of the planners and say, "You heard her. Get it done." He was also generally useless, coming to meetings late, always drunk with his groomsmen, and letting his bride handle everything. The church ceremony was delayed an hour because the groom's mother only started getting dressed when the ceremony was supposed to start. A week after the ordeal, this lovely bride asks my friend for her address as she wanted to send a cake over as thanks. An hour later, she calls my friend to confirm that she had given her the right address. My friend says yes, not realizing the bride and groom were personally delivering the cake. My friend is super humble, but she lives in a huge mansion, doesn't actually need the money from her event planning job, and doesn't attend high society events because her father thinks it's beneath them. The couple was shocked, and the groom tried to be overly friendly and pal-y with my friend, asking who the architect of her house was, etc., hoping that she wouldn't remember the shitty treatment he'd given her last week. She just graciously accepted the cake, wished the bride well, and closed the gate on them. Not a wedding planner, but had a former high school best friend who had me help her plan both of her weddings as her maid of honor. Both times from out of state, mind you, as I was a military wife. First wedding, she marries this total weirdo she barely knows, basically because he made a lot of money selling cars. At the reception, the best man tells me he barely even knows the groom. She makes me stay up all night the night before decorating the venue with her. I have to pay to fly in as well as for my giant sparkly pink dress, the whole 9 yards. Did I mention the groom decided he hated me at some point during the engagement? OMG, he was so rude to me. Crickets. Marriage lasts a year. Fast forward to second wedding, me still out of state, her still expecting me to help her plan. I get to town, and it turns out she has asked another friend of hers who has hated me since high school to also be her maid of honor because she got mad at me while planning. Then her husband-to-be said the other friend couldn't be her maid of honor because she was too sexually active, and he didn't want a woman like that standing up for them in front of God. So she resorted back to me without ever telling me I had lost the title or the other friend she had either. So at rehearsal, other friend finds out she's been demoted and loses her shit because she didn't even get to be in the car salesman wedding. Also because he thought she was too slutty. How did these husbands even know about this woman's sex life? Bride was a big fan of telling her friends personal stuff in attempts to make herself look more appealing. Looking back, I'm sure there was lots of fun stuff said about me behind my back as well, just like every other female in her life. Just how she was. Anyway, when other maid of honor confronted bride, asking why she lied to her about being maid of honor, bride accused her of being selfish and not thinking of her on her second big day and started crying. Guilts other maid of honor into staying in wedding. Next day, other maid of honor, now just a bridesmaid, who was a single mom, balks at paying 3 figures for hair and makeup. Bridezilla is back, showing no empathy and shrugging and saying that's what she signed up for. The best part? When I got married, second marriage but only wedding I've had as first marriage was a courthouse special. She didn't show up. She didn't want to miss a local vacation with her new husband's boring family. We aren't friends anymore. Not sadly. Sometimes having history with people doesn't make it worth dealing with their shit, and weddings have a good way of bringing that out. Maid of honor here. TLDR at the bottom. I've been bridesmaided for weddings and this particular one was going to be my 5th time being in the wedding party, but my first time as a maid of honor. I'm so glad it didn't happen. I'm just gonna mention the major bits. It's been years since it happened, so some of the details are mushy. She and I had been close friends since college and she and her fiance had been high school sweethearts. He was a trust fund baby and she had absent parents. He finally popped the question close to their 10-year anniversary, and within a couple of weeks, she had assembled her bridal party. I was deeply touched that she wanted me to be her MOH, and I accepted her request. I was in charge of the general wrangling duties that come with being the MOH. Things started out incredibly fun, and I enjoyed helping her out. But as the date got closer and closer, she descended into the pit and arose a full-fledged Bridezilla. I ended up having to hunt around a ton of the Los Angeles bridal shops to track down the exact bridal outfit for her. She wanted a particular dress with a specific shape, construction, bust line, fabric, color, and she wanted some super specific accessories to go with it. She would leave me messages saying that I had to go to specific shops on specific days and would get annoyed when I placed my job priorities ahead of her wedding details. She is vegan, and I mean heavily vegan. The menu eventually changed into one that had no options for non-vegans, despite the majority of the guests being omnivores. Whenever I'd bring it up to her, she'd reply with, well, they should know better because it's my wedding. They don't have to eat if they don't like it. The wedding was to take place at a gorgeous retreat in the mountains just outside of LA. She was so hellbent on it that they put down a hefty non-refundable deposit right away. Since it was up in the mountains, I knew that we wouldn't have easy access to non-vegan establishments should we get hungry, and my partner especially is a carnivore. Bride had planned on the wedding party staying in a cabin house that they were going to rent for the occasion, so I figured it wouldn't hurt to ask if we could bring our own food to make. When I ran this by her, she abruptly told me, "Fuck no, you can't bring that shit inside my cabin. You better find a way to take the microwave and nuke that shit outside, because no fucking way am I gonna let the cabin smell like meat." At that point I was so ready to be done. They had a trip to some hipster music festival coming up, so I made up my mind to use that time away from her to come up with a good way to remove myself from the situation. No need for that, as it turns out. They came back from the trip with their engagement dissolved. Apparently they came to the realization that they didn't really love each other and that it was just a relationship of convenience. Felt a little bad, but at the same time relieved. Don't know who broached it first, but I have my guesses. She promptly moved out of his house and ended up losing all her financial support. She seemed shocked at this result. This was how I found out that he and his parents were basically bankrolling her. Yowza. Our friendship kept rolling downhill from there. She kept morphing into some other girl that wasn't the girl I became friends with. TLDR, I was the maid of honor. She was my close friend from college. She slowly devolved into a Bridezilla that thought that her party and her guests should all be bent to her preferences with no exceptions. Your job better not interfere with planning her wedding. She's vegan and you're not? Too bad. You're having vegan for dinner, no exceptions. etc etc. They didn't even make it to the wedding day. Thanks for watching. Leave a comment with your own Bridezilla stories. Like the video if you enjoyed the stories. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like these.